What's going on, fellas? We did it again. Went out there, shipped a GPP today, took down 5 grand, and then over there on PrizePicks, made it the cherry on top with another few smash cards. Overall, here on a Saturday, went great. I mean, even UFC, we went out there, we're able to ship some profit, so can't complain from that front. And what we're going to do here is get you prepared to go out there and make Sunday your best day of profit for this week. We're going to talk about what we saw with the golf course through the first 2 rounds. We'll talk about the weather for Sunday. We'll head over to Draftkings, look at the player pool, talk through who's going to be chalk, who's going to be the low-owned pivot like a DJ today, who went out there and ended up winning me a lot of money. Also, Sichuan Kim. I hope you guys were on that play there. Went out there, plus 17 the first day. We weren't on him. Today, shot 63, 7 under par. That's right. I told you he had a bounce back in him. Went out there, proved us right. Guys like Sergio smashed. Scott Vincent went out there, had a pretty solid day. And overall, even with Cam Smith, so this is the crazy part. I had Cam Smith in my GPP winning lineup, and we're going to bring it up here in a second. If you can do so, you know the rest of your lineup was an absolute smash. So let's go ahead, share my screen. We'll bring up the lineup that ended up winning it all today. And frankly, I don't think it was that impressive, right? It was far from perfect, but because I was in a 2,000 entry contest, you didn't need the nuts to go out there and take it down. So for $8 entry, had Cam Smith, DJ that I talked about. We also had Sergio Garcia, Scott Vincent, Kim, and Chikara there in that lineup. So believe it or not, the worst player was Cam Smith, and that eagle there in 18 was what I needed to come in and actually win that tournament. So if that would have been a birdie, I would have ended up finishing in 5th place, which in this tournament, I believe, let's look at it right now, this M Pendle lineup would have been $250. Instead, because Cam clutched up, went out there and were able to ship 5 grand. So sometimes it's as close as that when it comes down to winning a GPP. But you got to celebrate it when you end up coming in on the top end there. So obviously, I'm pretty excited about it. But let's talk about the lineup construction, because at first, I was all over Cam Smith. I mean, we talked about that on stream, but I also mentioned that I'm going to play some DJ. And the reason why is when you take a Cam Smith and a DJ, it completely changes your lineup construction, right? You can see I took those 2 up top, 1 middle tier option like a Sergio, and I had to live down there in the 6K range. The beautiful part was a ton of guys in the 6K range absolutely went off today. You also had Saddam, who went out there, shot like 5 under par. So a lot of you guys were probably on him. He was relatively chalky today. You can see Chikara, believe it or not, was 22% owned. And I guess a lot of that comes down to price. So we're going to talk about a little bit of the cheaper guys on the price board for tomorrow. Just understand they're going to get ownership because, you know, today, obviously, this was in a 2,000 entry contest. Over there in the 11,000 entry contest, Chikara was a little bit lower owned, but it wasn't all that much, right? He was still pretty significantly owned in that contest. So generally, strategy for these large field GPPs, especially in the live side, has been a little bit volatile ownership. I mean, in round 1, Adrian Otegi, for example, was 27% owned in the large field GPP. That was entirely due to pricing, just people trying to jam in as many people up top as humanly possible. And I think a lot of it is due to the optimizers, because I ran a lot of these lineups on an optimizer that I have myself. And, you know, these guys like a Cam Smith DJ, they project so much higher than the rest of the field. You know, it was trying to jam him in as many times as possible. And eventually I just succumbed to it. I said, you know what? I'm going to take this sort of build. And obviously today ended up winning me a GPP. So it was a good move there. So I guess, you know, a check in the box of everyone out there that's an optimizer nerd, because I would 1000% have never gone to this lineup by hand. I mean, look at it, right? The top 2 guys up top, that's hard to swallow. You're already looking at a low salary number. It's not like Sergio was my favorite play in the mid-tier range. And then you had Scott Vincent, Kim, and Chikara together. Like, you kidding me, right? You're not going to get to that sort of lineup if you're going out there and building by hand. But if you go with the portfolio approach like I do, it takes a lot of the thought out of your lineup making process, right? It takes a lot of the biases out that just naturally come into your player pool when you're going out there and actually clicking in players yourself, right? That's why I like relying on the computer. It does the thinking for you, right? And when you got to go out there in Showdown and win with a wacky build, I mean, almost every time you look at the GPP winning build, it's going to be just something you would have never thought of beforehand. This is how you get to that sort of build. You take the thought out of it. So that's why I am an advocate for the optimizer side of things. And today, I guess, was a little bit of an example of that, right? Because Nutty Squid, for example, I meant to mention this too, just a win for the community. He's down here in the Discord. He actually joined this week. His first 2 rounds of analysis were here at the LIV event and came in second place for $1,500 on an $8 entry. So I'm sorry I had to beat you there by 0.6 points. You had me sweating at the end, Nutty Squid. But nonetheless, you love to see when the community ends up going number 1 and number 2 there. Can't complain at all. So Nutty Squid, shout out to you. You had DJ answer a lot more balanced build. So clearly multiple ways to go out there and skin a cat. He had a one guy up top, a couple guys there in the 8/9K range, also Tringali, who I played in 40% of my lineup. So I thought that was a really sharp play. Good on you there. And you didn't have a dud, right? Your worst player was -3. So I suppose I kind of luck sacked it a little bit, right? Because I still had Cam Smith and ended up winning. But I guess that's what happens when you just hit the absolute nuts with every other spot. So I can't complain from that end. Let's stop talking about my wins because honestly, they don't matter all that much. Over here in PrizePicks, we also hit a, believe it or not, all matchup card. I told you guys, I hate matchups, right? But I'll always bet them just in case because I usually see an edge on them. But because they're so volatile, shit ends up happening. Today, I ended up going perfect on those. So that was pretty sweet. But in terms of the leaderboard, what we have to learn from it, really, we learned that this golf course is volatile, which is kind of the worst thing that we could have learned about it. Today, a lot of the guys that went off, you couldn't have seen it coming. I mean, let's just start with the clear and obvious example, right? I talked about it, right? There's a reason why we were on this example here. I mean, David Faraday was completely beside himself after the event, had no idea he could have, he actually was like, no one could have seen this coming. I was like, well, I did, right? I actually called it this morning. Sichuan Kim, right? 87 in round 1, shot 63 today. That's a perfect example of the volatility at this golf course. It's 6,900 yards. Anyone, and I mean, not, I guess I shouldn't say anyone, any of these professionals is capable of taking this place low, taking it to a 64. I'd say 65 or better, right? Maybe a 63 is a little bit of an extreme example, right? Going from a really shit round to a really good round. But somebody who shot +5 today, like a Peter Uline, somebody like a Turk Pettit who shot +3, Swafford, Patrick Reed, Paul Casey would be a perfect example of this sort of player. Don't completely write them off, right? If somebody can shoot +17 and then go -7, that tells you everything you have to know about this golf course. It's all about your putting ability. And really, that's what we learned today, that this is a putting fest. It's in every definition, just hit fairways, right? It's not about distance off the tee. Matthew Wolff, I think I hit, at least from what I saw, they didn't show every tee shot. May have hit 4 drivers all day. And I imagine if he was hitting driver, they probably would have shown it. It was a lot of irons and free woods off the tee. Cam Smith was a little bit more aggressive. And I think he hit at most 8 drivers. So it was 8 out of 13 fairways that they have out there. You're looking at a golf course that the greens are pretty large, right? So you're going to get it in the fairway because you're laying up. And then you're just dealing with flat greens. Like this is such an easy golf. They just handpicked this for low scores. So today, the fact that guys like Taylor Gooch only shot 5 under, Joaquin only shot 5 under, Lahiri, all these guys. I would have expected more. Like legitimately here on Sunday, I mean, no matter the pins they put out there, I'm going to expect improvement because to be honest, these guys left a lot of shots out there. Like Joaquin Neiman left at least 4 shots on the greens within 2 inches of the hole. They're short. It was extremely frustrating. He had a few 4-footers that he actually missed the hole completely. So it was a yip out there from 4 feet. That was for birdie. He could have easily shot 10 under par. Legitimately, that's the type of ball striking round that he had. So I know that the scores looked a little bit worse here for the second round. I honestly expect them to get better. Like just a lot of shots were left out there. And I know maybe it's just me remembering some of those examples, but it was like everyone up top. Taylor Gooch had multiple misses from less than 7 feet. DJ even had multiple misses for birdie today. And almost everything that he made was, I think, except for the eagle. The eagle made here an 8 was a relatively long putt. Everything else was like 10 to 15 feet or less. It was more than reasonable, right? It's not like he luck sacked into a -7 round. All of this is repeatable. And I think you're still going to continue to see really low rounds. And remember here for Showdown, we're going to talk about that strategy right here in a second. There are no placement points. It's LIV Showdown. It's not your typical round 4 Showdown. You're just getting points based on your birdie production, bogeys, streaks, all that sort of stuff. So what's happened to this point? I don't want to say it's irrelevant, right? It's going to help us with trying to choose players that are in form, but it shouldn't sway our decisions all that much other than telling us who's in form, right? So we have to realize that almost all of the ownership is going to go to Taylor Gooch. Like he's probably going to be at least 25% owned, which for Taylor Gooch is pretty aggressive because he will be expensive. He's up there in terms of price. Let's see. He's $10,000, right? So still in the 10K range. He's going to be pretty solidly owned. Joaquin Niemann, same story up there in the 10K range. DJ, after his round today, is probably the highest owned player on the slate. So probably upwards of 30, maybe 35%. Today, Cam Smith, for example, was 37% owned. I could see Dustin Johnson right in that same sort of range. Lahiri is going to be relatively high owned. I don't want to say you have to fade everyone from, let's say, 8 under and up. So like Wiesberger, Wolf, Kokrak, and all of them. But I'm going to. I'm just going to take everyone from 8 over and up and completely fade them. And honestly, probably going to include Saddam there, probably going to include somebody like a Pat Perez and Brendan Grace, because I don't think they're the best players to begin with. And they are going to get artificial increases of ownership just because they're in the quote unquote top 10, right? Here, tied for 8th. I might play somebody like Cam Smith. We're going to talk about him plenty. Don't worry. Actually, I should say I'm definitely playing him. I 100% can tell you we're playing him, but we'll get to that later. Louis, I might end up playing somebody like Kevin Na, for example. But a lot of the guys at the top of the board, at least if you're just playing from the game theory perspective, and I think for round 3 showdown for LIV specifically, I think it's the perfect opportunity for it because, typically round 3 showdown for PGA, right, where we also don't have placement points, people will kind of play it like there's some sort of advantage there. Now we're talking about Sunday on the LIV Tour. Even more people are going to trick themselves up, right? Are going to think that there's placement points involved, are way too lazy to go to the roles tab on DraftKings and look it up themselves. These guys, I expect to be even more chalky. Now we're going to go through it. I think DJ is the one guy you might still want to consider playing. I mean, he looked like an absolute monster today. Joaquin Niemann left a lot of shots out there. I also may consider playing him. In fact, he's probably making my player pool. But for somebody like a Gooch who's in first place, he's probably going to be 10% higher owned than he should be. Might end up being a fade. Lahiri is almost certainly going to be a fade for me. Kokrak, undecided on. We'll have to see about him. He usually comes in lower owned than he should be. People don't like playing Jason Kokrak, and I honestly don't know the reason why, but almost every single time we project him, he comes in lower owned than almost every algorithm and almost every website out there thinks. Matthew Wolf, for example, I'm probably not going to play, right? It's not a good course fit. If there's one skill set that I'm looking for, we talked about the putting, right? This is definitely a putting fest. We've established that. There's no doubt about it. You've seen that through pretty much the first 3 rounds. The guys that are in the top 10 of putts per round are generally up here in the top 10 to top 15 of the event. So it's a pretty clear correlation, in my opinion, especially based on the skill set of players. I mean, Kokrak, Lahiri, Wolf's a really good putter. Wiesberger's a world-renowned putter. Perez, that's pretty much all we can do at this point. I mean, Cam Smith, the Louis Oosthuizen, it speaks for itself. Kevin Na as well. Mark Leishman, all the guys up here. I don't even have an exception to give you, honestly. They're all good putters. I guess except for Saddam. Like, we don't know if he's a good putter, but based on what we saw at the Open and based on what we've seen on LIV, maybe Saddam's just a really good player. Like, I talked about that yesterday. It's the reason why we played him today, right? He shot 4 under par, backed it up, had an even better round than he had in round 1. Is what if he's just really damn good? And honestly, he just backed it up today, right? We have no reason to think that that's not the case. If he goes out there tomorrow and shoots like another 4 under par round, he's just a certified stud. So that's something that we have to consider here with these players. And with the weather aspect, it looks really calm. So they'll be teeing off right around 1:15 p.m. Eastern time. You're going to have very similar to today, right around 6 to 7 miles an hour of sustained winds. And the wind gusts are non-existent. And because they're in a wooded area, it's a parkland-style golf course, not going to be having any wind to begin with, right? It has to get through those trees. And if it's just 6 to 7 miles an hour, these players aren't going to feel a thing. So similar conditions to today. And like I said, I felt like the scoring could have been better. Like, the guys at the top were still shooting 5 to 7 under par. I think that you're going to see somebody shoot 9, maybe 10 under par tomorrow. Perhaps even sniff something like a 59 out there. Just the conditions are ripe for it. Perfect wind conditions. It's a short golf course, receptive greens. They're pure greens. They also don't have much undulation on them. I mean, there's no defense to this golf course, right? Except if you miss off the fairway. Like, you have to drive it accurately. That's the one thing I'll say. But that's pretty much the case for any sort of ceiling round like that. So that's what we're looking at from a course conditions perspective and in terms of weather. From a DFS perspective now, so going to talk about my top plays. Let's go through this player pool. So up top, Cam Smith. You would expect me to be a little bit jaded about him because he shot 1 under par. Screwed me on a few of PrizePicks cards. Also hardly won the GPP, and it was only because he only shot 1 under par, had that eagle. I'm still going right back to it. He had his absolute worst stuff today. And one thing that I've noticed about Cam Smith over the last year and a half we've been playing him here is when he has a bad round, he's one to bounce back quickly. And today was certainly a bad round. He lost strokes to the field at a live sort of event. He's expecting to go out there and pretty much dominate round in and round out, right? Like Taylor Gooch, right? Shot 7 under, then 5 under par. He's expecting to have those sort of results and didn't do it today. So he's definitely going to be out there grinding. I'd expect him to be out there early, working on his game, figuring out whatever was going on today, because on approach, he was far from sharp. I mean, was missing greens. These are large surfaces too. So when you're missing greens here, it's a pretty notable miss. It's not like when you're at Pebble Beach or Brookline, right, where you have those really small surfaces and even good golf shots ended up bounding through the green. They're receptive here and they're massive, right? You have no excuse to be out there missing greens regulation. The putter was electric today. It's just that he wasn't in position enough to score to make it count. So, as per usual with Cam Smith, the one thing that he has in his back pocket is an absolute money putter. Somebody who's not going to miss those 10 to 15 footers. And when he's out there and has the ball striking, he cashes in with a ceiling round, right? It's just money. Like you book it, right? If he has this stuff with his irons, he's going to go low. And hopefully he can bring that to the table. And if he does, I don't want to say he has a chance to win because he's 5 shots off the lead, but he's still alive, right? To at least finish in the top 3, if not go out there and end up getting his first LIV title. Next up, we've got DJ, who's going to be extremely popular. But kind of like today, I honestly don't know how I can fade these two guys up top. I ended up playing both of them, paid off clearly with our GPP win there that we reviewed earlier. But there at minus 10, I do see myself playing him. And I know placement points don't matter, right? It doesn't matter. He goes up there, grabs a lead. There's a no 12-point bonus like we have over there on PGA. But what I like here is his form today. I mean, just when he was in the fairway, every single iron shot was like to 10 to 15 feet. The putter was electric, which you love to see from DJ. And even if he wasn't making a ton of putts today, still would have shot like 3, 4 under par. Still would have been more than enough, right? So if you're in a single entry 2 to 3 max, I think he's by far the best play up top, going to be the most consistent player that I think we have to choose from. But on top of that, he's got the firepower, I mean, as evidenced by his round today, to go to something like a 7, 9, perhaps even a 10 under par sort of score. He can get into that kind of groove in a 6,900-yard golf course. Outside of 5 holes, he's going to have a wedge in hand. So I really like that for DJ. So Cam Smith, DJ, I don't think you can go wrong there. The two guys that I'm fading, and it's down to ownership. It's also down to experience level, right? Are Joaquin Niemann and Taylor Gooch. I think that they're going to be close to Cam Smith. So first off, I think Cam Smith is going to be lower owned than all of Dustin Johnson, Niemann, and Gooch. And I think that Niemann and Gooch are going to be, let's say, like 7-8% lower owned than somebody like a Dustin Johnson. So Niemann and Gooch, if you think you're getting cute by getting to these guys that are up there at the top of the leaderboard, you're not. You're going to be taking guys that I think are quote unquote bad chalk. So I'm going to be fading both of these players, $10,200, $10,000. It just comes down to ownership. Now, if I have to add players to actually fit in, I think I'm playing in another 66 max there for tomorrow. I might end up adding somebody like a Taylor Gooch. But in terms of ownership concerns, right, I'm a lot more enthralled with these two guys up top. Now, for prize picks, do I think that they're more than liable to shoot something like 3 under par? That sort of thing, maybe make 5 birdies tomorrow? Absolutely, right? Like, but do I think that they have a ceiling performance in them, right? Where I'm trying to take down a GPP like we did today? Maybe not necessarily so much. So that's why I'm taking these two guys up top. It worked out for me today. And frankly, Cam Smith didn't even have that good of a round. Imagine if he went out there and smashed. I would have won that GPP by probably like 30, 40 points, right? And there's not that much opportunity cost involved as long as you can hit elsewhere. So let's move down to the leaderboard, talk about who we're playing other than the guys up top. Paul Casey, I think, is primed for a bounce back. Played like dog shit today. I did have him in my DFS lineups, but I also played him over 67.5 on PrizePicks. Now, he didn't have to shoot like +7 or whatever he ended up shooting out there, right? Just atrocious. But he did, right? So we hit on PrizePicks. On Draftkings, those lineups were absolute donations, but going to be super low owned. He's $9,600. And I think that you have more than enough evidence, right? After watching Kim go from an 87 to a 63, to go out there and take a chance of like Paul Casey bouncing back, right? He's more than capable of turning it around. Today was atrocious, but maybe tomorrow is his day. So I'm getting there at $9,600. Probably going to play him in like 15 to 20%. So not going to go crazy on my boy Paul Casey, but I'm going to have enough exposure to where if he goes off at probably close to single digit ownership, that I at least have proper leverage to the field. I also like Louis Oosthuizen. Now he's kind of been a little bit under the radar to this point. First round shot, I believe 3 under, actually 4 under par. Today shot 3 under par, which, kind of middling. I'd say just above average. That's why he's just there and tied for 8th. But here in the last round, if he gets hot with that flat stick, watch out because the iron play was there. Even when he got out of position today, had multiple times he had to actually chip out of the woods. He hit irons to like 4 to 5 feet, ended up saving par. So the fact that he shot 3 under could have been something like 5 to 6 under par if he just kept the ball in the fairway. And Louis Oosthuizen in general is a relatively accurate player off the tee. So though I faded him on PrizePicks and it bit me, I should have known that, right? I really like Louis. Should never bet against him. I'm definitely going to be on him for round 4 showdown. And we'll talk about PrizePicks. Hopefully, let's see. Do they have up the board yet? They do not yet. So hopefully if we actually they do. We're good. Don't have to ramble too long here for the showdown stuff. We're going to talk about Louis Oosthuizen over there. I imagine there might be a proper tooth that I like for him. We'll have to see. No guarantees. They may price it out of my desired range, but I'm expecting there to be a pretty decent line there. Moving down to the 8K range. So Bryson today kind of proved me wrong, right? I said that on PrizePicks, probably not the best play on Draftkings, a better play. Ended up being better on PrizePicks and worse over there on Draftkings. So kind of bit me there, but I stand by that, right? I'd rather play him on Draftkings. Probably going to make my pull here for round 3. On PrizePicks, most likely going to be a fade. So, again, no guarantees there. We're going to have to look at the board. It was just posted. But definitely somebody I'd consider for DraftKings. Just makes a ton of birdies. That was evidence today. Went out there, was able to make, I believe, a streak at one point. Made 7 birdies total. If he does that tomorrow at $9,100, that's probably cracking an optimal lineup. Patrick Reed, definitely another bounce back candidate. Him and HV3, I believe HV3 shot even par. Patrick Reed actually might have shot 3 over par. So was a especially or notably bad day for Patrick Reed. And I couldn't really put a finger on it. I mean, he was missing a lot of greens. I think that was the main reason. A few times he had to chip out of the trees too, which probably doesn't help your score. But like anybody else out there, this is a golf course that doesn't really prioritize ball striking ability. So just because he was a little bit lackluster one day doesn't mean he doesn't luck sack himself into a low round tomorrow. So I do like Patrick Reed. And like I said, the one thing that you absolutely have to get to that ceiling round is the putting. And Patrick Reed has that in bunches. So I like that there. HV3, similar story. I don't like him quite as much as Patrick Reed, but I still do like HV3, somebody who didn't have his best round today. Brooks Koepka just can't make a putt for his damn life. I mean, he had multiple looks inside of 10 feet that he just completely whiffed. I mean, he whiffed one of them by like 7 or 8 feet, ended up making a bogey there. Just has to clean it up with the putter because the ball striking has been there. Off the tee, he's crushing it. He's also been relatively accurate, which is especially helpful around this venue. And the putter's been absolutely ice cold. That's why he's there in 24th place, right there, dead middle of the pack. I expect a little bit of a bounce back here. I don't know. In DraftKings, he's not going to be that highly owned because a lot of the ownership here is going to go to a Matthew Wolff, probably an Abraham Answer too. He had a really good day today. I believe shot 5 under par. So yeah, I'm okay getting to Brooks Koepka again, Varner, Patrick Reed, these guys like bounce backs up here. I'm avoiding the guys that are going to be higher owned, like a Matthew Wolff, because he's going to be 25, probably right around 25% owned, I'd say, here for Sunday Showdown. You're looking at maybe 15, 16% on a Brooks, probably like low teens for somebody on a Harold Varner III, probably low teens on somebody like a Patrick Reed up there at +1. Actually, maybe even single digit on Patrick Reed because people don't like playing him to begin with. And he's over par, right? There's always a little bit of an extra sour taste in your mouth when you go to click somebody on DraftKings and they're over par. So perhaps he's actually single digit owned, but clearly, right? Wolff is going to be the highest owned of the pack here. And by avoiding him, it lets you play 2 to 3 of these other players as I shouldn't say mistake, as a replacement there. Moving down a little bit further, we do have Answer, who I'm probably fading to. I played him through the first 2 rounds, but after today, I do expect people to flock to him at just $8,300 because, in fact, right for round 2 showdown, he was $9,000. Right now, he's $8,300. had the round of his life today. I mean, come on, right? Like, people are going to play a ton of them, and people played a lot today. It was like 20% owned. People were keen to that bounce back, saw that it was a great course fit for him. So he could be chalk that ends up coming through, that ends up hurting us here. But, if we're playing that game theory game, if he's going to be 25, 30% owned, like, I expect him and Matthew Wolf, I'd rather fade him and play somebody like a Grace, play a Kokrak, play even maybe not a Kevin Na. We'll talk about him here in a second, but definitely Charles Howell III, right? And if we fade Lahiri here, we can still play Kevin Na, right? That's how leverage works. We have to fade enough of this ownership. And by fading the guys that are higher owned, we can play sometimes two players as a replacement just for that one guy that we're fading. I'm going to do that a lot more often, especially because I play a portfolio approach, right? Like, I'm playing 66 lineups. That's the contest that I imagine myself entering tonight. It's an $8 entry. Same one that I won today in terms of the GPP. That sort of contest, I'd much rather have more bullets, right? More players to choose from, rather than having to play 40% of, let's say, a Rennie Grays, right? Like, I don't want to do that. I'd rather play like 20, 25% of them. Actually, maybe that's a bad example, right? Play like 40% of an Abraham Answer. I'd rather play, let's say, 30% of Garcia, maybe 20%, 15% of somebody like a Brendan Grace. I'd rather go that direction than going overboard on somebody like Answer, who I like. I think he's a decent course fit, but do I think he's worthy of being in half my lineups or nearly half of them? I mean, no, right? I think it's a little bit too aggressive there. So that's my take there in that 8K range. There's I think a lot of bad chalk and a lot of good low-owned pivot options. Let's see what we got down in chat, guys. We got Nick Mars, who says, congrats on the win. Thank you, dude. Well done, Jack Fisher says. I appreciate that, guys. Nick Mars says, live, love, cash. Maybe that's got to be my motto for some of these streams here. Got to give you some intellectual property rights there. Colin says, got 9th place today. Nice. Single bullet. If Kevin Na didn't bogey his last hole, you're looking at 3rd place. Yeah, I actually had a lineup that was trailing me. I don't think it could have passed me, but I was really paranoid about it. So I was like really rooting against anybody that was still on the golf course. So that was Keimer I was rooting against, Wiesberger, Joaquin Neiman. I couldn't have birdie the last hole. And the main one was Keimer, because actually the guy was tied with me for 1st place, and he had Keimer left, 1 hole left remaining, and it was for the hardest hole in the golf course. So I definitely knew in the back of my mind that a bogey was more than reasonable, especially when it said that he went from the trees to back to the fairway again, and then to the fairway for his 4th shot. So I was like, okay, we're probably looking at a dub here. And then, yeah, he ended up making like a 6 on the hole. So it was a good sweat, that's for sure. But I'm glad Colin went out there and got 9th place. Kevin Na, though, yeah, definitely somebody I played today, but at the end of the day, I had to root against because I had that lineup up there at the top. Let's see what else we got. We have Adolfo, who says, any unique plays for tomorrow. So that whole range that we just talked about is unique. So the guys that I'm on, right? So just to give you an idea, like Race, I think he's going to be a little bit lower owned than he should be, like maybe like 50. He's probably going to be like 15% owned, especially low owned plays. Varner, Patrick Reed is going to be really low owned. Bryson DeChambeau, probably looking at like 15%, which for Bryson is like the lowest you're going to get. People love playing Bryson, right? He has that name recognition. A lot of casuals will just play Bryson based on the fact that it's the big guy who hits the ball far. Like, I'm not kidding. People literally play him because of that, and that alone. So you're looking at low ownership on most of those players, maybe not Bryson. Definitely Paul Casey. So if you want to play just one guy here and almost guarantee that your lineup is going to be unique, it's Paul Casey, right? He's going to be single digit owned, and he's $9,600. That's going to be 3, maybe 4 times less owned than the guys around him in terms of price. So if you're looking for low owned pivots, those would be the guys that ring the bell there. Let's go ahead and talk about the 7K range. So getting past Charles Howell III here, who I like quite a bit. Lahiri, I think, might be a little bit popular. He's at the top of the board, so no surprise that I'm not that enthralled with playing him. Maybe he makes my pull at just somebody I'm matching the field on or something like that. But definitely not running to the window to play Arnaban Lahiri. Schwartzel shot 1 under par today. Didn't really do much. Now, I played him in my main lineup, which kind of sucked because he was our worst scorer today there at -1. Didn't sink our lineup, but didn't have the best day. I'm okay with him at $7,900. I mean, he's overall just a good ball striker. Not normally that accurate off the tee, but like I mentioned, Matthew Wolff was hitting a lot of 3-woods. I imagine Schwartzel, who, wasn't on the coverage very often, so we can't say this for sure, is probably doing the same because he's long off the tee, doesn't have to hit driver around here. So it's kind of surprising that he hasn't had that round yet. It's got to come down to the putter, right? He's not that consistent of a putter, but if there is one surface that Charles finds a lot of success on, it is the bent grass surface. So I do have a little bit of confidence there in Charles still, and he's definitely going to be low owned. Only shot -1 today. Leishman absolutely went off. I hope you guys played him. I definitely talked him up a lot yesterday, or say this morning. $7,800, shot -5. I don't expect him to do the same thing, but almost every time you have a slate, and even if he's playing well, was up there in contention. I mean, I remember when he was in contention at the Masters, he was still like 11% owned in round 4 Showdown. He just gets overlooked. No one likes to play Leishman. He's extremely volatile. I'm sure he's burned everyone at some point just because of how volatile his game can be. But he's also somebody who can post 6-7 birdies like he was able to do today. And typically it's when he gets that hot putter. And our reasoning for playing Leishman is because he's one of the best bent grass putters in the world, let alone here in the LIV Tour. And that's why he went out there and had the round he did. He made plenty of 20 to 25 footers, but that's kind of what Mark Leishman does. So if you're looking for a consistent play, and I said this with Leishman today, right? Run the opposite direction. He's not going to be a consistent player, but if you're looking for somebody who can give you the near nuts, and out there, Nutty Squid, who finished in second place of the GPP, was also in our Discord community, right? Part of our Patreon, had Leishman in his lineup, right? He was a near nuts play today. So I think that there's a lot of merit there. I'll be getting back to him, which kind of breaks from my DNA of taking players that had a good round, right? Typically, I'm going to go out there and fade him, but that's kind of what Mark Leishman does. And I think that he's just a better player than his peers. And on the contrary to a lot of the other players that shot 5 or 6 under par today, I think he might be the lower owned of the bunch, right? Might be a little bit more overlooked than his counterparts. Got some victory juice there in the cup, some whiskey. So bear with me there. I've been skimping out on it a little bit, so I got to catch up there. Moving on into the middle of this 7K range, Wiesberger had yet again another good day, and he looks locked in. I do worry about his ownership, but also no one knows who Wiesberger is, and a lot of the ownership here is starting to cluster around the household names, right? So today, I mean, let's talk about the bottom of the 6K range, actually, because it's a little bit of an enigma down here, a little bit different, right? Some weird stuff going down at the bottom of the 6K range. And today, the ownership, I shouldn't say the ownership, sorry, the pricing is different. So for yesterday's round, if you guys remember, there were a lot of options, right around like $6,400 and cheaper. I believe at least like 7-8 players. Today, let's see, $6,400, there's 5 players $6,400 or cheaper. And the whole way up to the 7K range is only like 10 or 11 players. That means that like 38 players in the field or $7,000 or more. They've completely adjusted the pricing, right? The guys up top are cheaper. So like an Abraham Answer, right? Who's $8,300 rather than $9,000. And the guys down bottom are more expensive. And today there was crazy ownership on the guys down low. If you remember over here with the winning lineup, Chikara was 22% owned. Now, Kim, low owned, right? Vincent, low owned. So there's still going to be guys that are going to be a little bit overlooked down low. Because there's less options now, I think these guys are going to be like mega chalk. Like, I mean, let's go through them one by one. Ormsey, probably low owned, right? You're probably looking at like 2% on an Ormsey. Kim, 15%. Like, I think he's going to get a lot of attention here. Pio, probably like 2%, right? Jediah Morgan, maybe like 1 or 2%. Same thing with Curdy. The one that sticks out to me here is Kim. Kim, I could see being 15, maybe even 20% owned, because you saw just with lineup construction purposes, people loved getting to somebody like Chikara. And there were a few other guys down low too that were at least 10, maybe a few of them are like 8 to 9% owned, which for somebody at the bottom of the 6K range, and I know it's a smaller slate because it's LIV, right? There's 48 players. That's still aggressive. That's way, way higher than we're used to seeing. There might be a few other guys down here that are higher owned. I mean, like Kong Wat Mai, I think he's probably going to get some attention. He's played pretty decently to this point, not only at this event, but also at a few other the LIV stops. Let's see. Phil, after his round today, might get some ownership, might be a little bit closer to 10%. rather than the 4 to 5% that he has been for the other rounds. Excuse me. And you can see a few other guys were priced up, like Vincent 7,100, Chikara 7,000. So you're starting to pay a lot more for those players, even though placement points aren't a part of the factor. Expect a few of these guys in the lower 6K range to be a lot higher owned than you expect. And again, for round one, it was Adrian Otwegi. And I can't tell you why he was the highest owned, because like down low, there were players with higher name recognition. Tomorrow, and I don't even think it's going to be Kim. I think Kim's going to be like 15% owned, right? One of these random dudes is going to be like 20% owned. And I honestly can't tell you who it was, because I couldn't tell you that it was Otegi there in round one. I didn't see that coming. I can just tell you, most likely, again, you're going to see that same sort of phenomena. So I guess just prepare to have that happen. You know, you go out there, you play, let's say, 10% Wade Ormsey, he ends up coming in at like 18% owned. Just know that that's probably what happened there. Moving up there to the 7K range. So where did we go and leave off here? Let's see. So we are on Wiesberger. We talked about him a little bit, and his play looked really good. And I think he'll be a little bit chalky. I don't mind Matt Jones. He's played kind of middling golf to this point, but they're in 19th place. He's still up there in the top half. If there was a cut after 2 rounds, he would have made the cut. So that's usually a demarcation line I'd use for whether somebody's in form or not for this event. And, you know, you'd have to say that he's at least in above average form. So I do like to see that. Down there with Cameron Tringale, he did have a really good bounce back today. Was also in Nutty Squid's lineup. He came there in second place, and plenty of my lineups too at 70. I believe he was like $8,100 on yesterday's slate. Now he's 7,500. He had a good round, so he's probably going to garner some attention. But today he was 8% owned. So by garnering attention, we're probably talking like 15, maybe 16% ownership, right? We're not talking like 20, 25%. So I'm still willing to get some leverage there, play 25, maybe 30% if I'm feeling a little bit frisky about it there with the Cameron Tringale, because he always brings that birdie production to the table. The real key factor of whether he can actually get to that ceiling is whether he can keep the bogeys off the table, right? Today, he had plenty of bogeys mixed in, but if he can go out there, get you 5 or 6 birdies, but keep a clean card, that very well could crack that optimal. So I do like Cameron Tringale at 7,500. Saddam, I don't know if we can even avoid him. I mentioned that today. We played him, of course. Went out there, shot 4 under par. I think we have to go back. Like, I just think he's a stud. I got the same vibes with Joohyung Kim. And then he went out there, finished in the top 10 twice, went out there, won an event. Maybe this is that sort of dude. And maybe he goes out there, shoots like a 61 tomorrow, ends up winning this event. Would not surprise me. This just, I don't know. I get some weird vibes when I watch him. Like, he's just an absolute stud. You see the same thing with Joohyung Kim. Like, you can just tell when you're watching somebody that's good at golf. And that's what I see with Saddam. I can't say his last name. I'm going to have to figure it out, because I think he's going to be somebody we're talking about for quite some time. Ian Poulter at 7,300. I like the putting, right? We're looking at this being a putting contest. So, of course, I'm going to want to get to somebody like an Ian Poulter. Who else checks that box? We have Uline can get hot with the putter. So I like getting there. Phil Mickelson looked a lot better with the putter today, so I will be there for Final Round Showdown. They're at $6,600. Here in the 7K range, though, I mean, we talked about Poulter, but Bland, also a well above average putter. Laurie Cantor has been known for that ability for quite some time on the DP World Tour, European Tour days, when he went out there, got in contention multiple times. It's definitely the putting specialist that I see myself getting to the most, but there are a few wild cards mixed in. I think the Hudson Swafford is always somebody you can go out there and expect to see a ceiling round from time to time. So I do like him there at $7,100. We talked about Sean Norris. I don't hate him there. He shot even par. He's also somebody you'd classify as a putting specialist. But yeah, that's what I'm looking at in terms of a player pool, boys. We're going to go over and talk about prize picks now and talk through the board. And honestly, I haven't seen this before. So I'm going to take a drink here and try and digest this for a second, because again, this is literally my first look. So this will be my true first look reaction to it. Let's see. So you do have a few bumps here that are notable. So first and foremost, DJ to 5.5 now. He was at 5. So 4.5 for the first, actually 5 birdies for the first round, 5 birdies for the second round. Now he's there at 5.5. Cam Smith is still at 5. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that he only made 4 today. So Clearly didn't get the bump that DJ did. Might want to consider an under there, but I don't think I have the stones for it, to be quite honest with you. DJ's playing some unbelievable golf right now. The rest of the board looks pretty similar. So the guys at 4.5, I think the only change would be Brendan Grace. He was at 4 before. Now he's at 4.5. Answer was at 4. He's still at 4. I believe ended up making 6 birdies today. So I kind of like that. Paul Casey was bumped down from 4.5 birdies down to 4. Makes sense after he shot like +7 today. And round 1 did actually go over that 4.5 mark. So, they're at 4. It might actually be somebody to be considered for an over. And let's see, Phil Mickelson at 3.5. I think we have to consider taking the over there, boys. Like the average birdies here is close to 5. It's like 4.9 the last time I checked it, at least for round 1. I know the scores today were a little bit worse, but Phil Mickelson's in form. I mean, the iron play has been there for quite a while now. And today he started to make those 7 to 10 footers. So 3.5 birdies, I like the over there. And in general, I think it's a solid board for taking overs. And even the guys up here at 5, like Cam Smith over 5 birdies, sign me up all day. Joaquin Niemann, I'd probably even consider that for over 5 birdies. And DJ, if anything, I think I would lean the over there. But if I'm going to take over 5.5 birdies, absolutely not, right? If somebody gets to 5 birdies, I want to at the very least push. Like I know it's a little bit of a weak-minded thing to say, right? To make that part of my bet, but that is part of my thought process, right? If somebody gets to 5 birdies, like I don't know if I could stomach someone going out there and pushing. It would just be a little bit ridiculous. So I'm going to stick to Cam Smith, Joaquin Niemann there up top. And then a few of the other guys there at 4, 3.5 birdies like a Phil Mickelson. I think overall it is a solid board for overs though. Moving over to strokes. Let's see. Let me digest this again. This is my first time looking at it. So let's see what we think about it. Wow, Bryson still at 67.5. Okay. Lahiri, 67.5. Okay, so this board has definitely been bumped down. So in terms of what it was yesterday, you had a lot of guys here at like 68.5. So guys like Perez, for example, Schwartzel was 68.5. I believe Poulter was probably still at that same number. Lahiri, though, was at 67, right? Guys like, let's see who else is a little bit bumped here. Cameron Smith, for example, we're still at 67. So these elite tier guys weren't touched, right? Like a DJ, like Cameron Smith, for example. But these mid-tier guys were bumped down. So what that tells me is that PrizePicks was probably slaughtered today when it came to their strokes props, and they decided to bump them as a result. At numbers like 67.5 for Lahiri, it's much more of a 50-50 prospect now than it was before, right? At 68 strokes, it was a clear under spot, right? Like it made a lot of sense to try and target somebody like him when the scoring average was like 2.5 strokes under par. Now that 67.5, don't know if I buy in on it as much. So I'd actually shade the over, if anything, on somebody like a Lahiri. Now, for somebody like a Brooks, who we took the under on today, he hit the under. I'd still take the under there, especially for DJ Cam Smith. I'd run right back to the well there. Today, DJ hit for us on the under in strokes. Cam Smith did not, so that was a little bit unfortunate, but I would still be more than willing to make that play. At 68 strokes, I have to get a little bit more selective here. And personally, Patrick Reed at 68, I could see myself taking. I know he had the bad round today, but he's more than capable of turning it around. Paul Casey, 68 strokes. He was at 67.5 through the first 2 rounds. I could see myself taking the under there at 68 strokes now that he's been bumped up a little bit. And even Phil at 71.5. Like he looked really good today. And I know he still had plenty of bogeys on the card. He looks like he's really turning it around. And the scoring average is 2.5 strokes under par. So you're telling me if he loses 2 strokes to the field, or actually he can lose 3 strokes to the field tomorrow and still cover his prop there. Actually, he can lose 3.5 strokes to the field and still end up covering his prop right there. I think I like that, right? Like you have to, right? A 71 would be 3.5 strokes worse than the field average. Phil Mickelson can make that happen. So I do like that there with the strokes prop, particularly after what we saw today. Moving over to birdie or better now, let's go through this matchup by matchup because I have no idea what to expect from these. Let's see. So first matchup, Bryson versus Harold Varner III. That seems like a classic fade for me. I just don't touch that. 2 volatile players that aren't playing all that good golf. Just Doesn't seem like anything I'd have an edge on. Same thing with this Mickelson versus Bland. Two guys that are in middling form that are pretty much the same sort of player. Not anything that I'm going to find a 65% sort of edge on. Koepka versus Howe. We took it today. It paid off for taking Brooks Koepka. I'd consider taking it again. I'd say that's a lean towards Koepka, but I don't know if that's something I'm actually going to end up taking. Louis versus Kevin Na. Let's see what we've got. Honestly, that's a pretty close matchup. It's probably a fade for me. So kind of similar to the Bryson versus HV3. Similar form, both playing pretty well. Similar pedigree as well. Similar type of player too, right? Accurate off the tee. Definitely plus putters, elite level putters when they're playing well. Just not a matchup I want to get to. This Reed versus Tringali one, I would actually favor Tringali there and favor him quite heavily. So I would take the under there towards Tringali. That's for sure. So on Patrick Reed, under pretty better matchup. Brennan Grace versus Leishman, that's another fade. Towards the bottom of the board, actually, we're going to go through this line and then stop because I don't want to give you guys all my matchup bets. Again, they're all on the Patreon, right? So I gotta protect some of the picks for everybody. And again, for the other categories, like we didn't go over every prop that I'm taking. I got to protect some of the picks. So we'll go through a couple more of these. Answer versus Horsfield, definitely like the Answer side. Wolf versus Uline, that's a fade. And Perez versus Vincent's a fade too. So, I don't love taking birdie or better matchups. That's why I'll fade a lot of them more than I'm taking them. Just, if I see like a 65% sort of edge, then I'll fire on them. Like today, we had a 5 of 5 banger card today that hit. Let's see if I can bring it up. I'll bring it up on Discord and show you guys. Actually, I showed you guys earlier, whatever. We don't have to worry about it. They were all birdie or better matchups, which is surprising. Typically, that doesn't end up being our more profitable cards, but I also don't force them. And I saw 5 matchups that I really liked yesterday. I know at least through the first 2 lines that we had, there were like 3, maybe 4 of them that we could see myself getting to. If we can find a 5th down low, and again, no promises. I'll be telling you guys down on Patreon if we do. Might have to fire back another 5-man card, right? It worked today. Maybe it'll work again tomorrow. But that's all I've got from that end. Let's go ahead and see if there's any questions down there. You do. Nick Marsh says, how do you feel about Ortiz tomorrow? So Ortiz is somebody I'm always willing to take a chance on just because of his upside. Let's see where he's at. So he's -4, had a pretty decent day today. He's $7,800. I think he's probably going to be the low teens ownership. So let's say close to 12, maybe 13%, give or take 4 or 5% in either direction. So let's not say 4 or 5%, let's go 1 or 2%. You be a little bit more accurate about it. In either direction there. I think he's a good play. He's going to be relatively low owned. He's got the upside you're looking for. And though he's not consistent, and you got to know that with Carlos Ortiz going in, that he's going to fail a lot more than he succeeds. But he's also one of the only players in that range that can reliably get to 7 to 8 under par, right? Can actually give you that ceiling performance. For example, I worry about that with Westwood, right? At his age, I don't know if I see him going out there and posting a 61, something like that. Same thing with somebody like a Wiesberger. He's a little bit more consistent. Right? He's going to go out there, shoot 4 under par a lot of times. But is he going to get to 8 under par often? Not all that much. Pat Perez, that same sort of player, they're at $7,700. I'd much rather play Carlos Ortiz there in the upper end of that 7K range, just because he has the upside. So, Nick, to answer your question there, I absolutely love him for tomorrow. But boys, that is all I've got here for the live stream. Was obviously excited with our win today, but not looking to rest on those laurels. Let's go out there, smash for round 4, bring it home on PrizePicks. Also do the same thing over there on Draftkings. So looking forward to it. Hopefully can bring home another one. That'd be pretty sweet. And then, we have next week off. I believe there's no live event. There's no PGA event. So we're going to be off next week. Going to be a huge focus on I shouldn't say round 1. I've been saying that too much. Got to get my head in football mind at this point, right? Week 1 for the NFL. There'll be plenty of content out for that. And then the President's Cup, which there will be DFS for. They did it for the Ryder Cup. So stay tuned for that. Going to be quite a lot of fun on that end too. Appreciate you guys as per usual. Hit that like button on the way out, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side.